All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoke and gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr. And with me as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I am doing pretty good. How is everybody tonight?
Tonight's episode is going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Because on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about what we were talking about on last week's episode. I kind of started to get into this house that I used to live in. And all the crazy things that would happen there. And I told you that this week we would do the show on that subject. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you about all of the experiences I had when I was in that house, all the crazy things that happened there, all the different entities that were active in the house. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the house, the legends, the local legends of the house and what it was. And then Old Boy's going to get into some of his experiences and everything like that. So we're just going to have a good time tonight. So when I first moved here, let me start actually back further. I grew up in the military. My father was in the Air Force, and I grew up all over the world. I spent my childhood in Europe. He was stationed in Germany. And my entire childhood was spent going to England and France, and I've seen every castle in Europe. It was quite amazing. As a child, I would see dead people a lot. And you can imagine it kind of freaked me out. Now, I also had the whole dream thing going on every night. So to say that I was a bit of a mess would be an understatement. My grandmother told me that if I slept with a Bible underneath my pillow, that all of that stuff would stop. So I tried it. I began sleeping with a Bible underneath my pillow, and I began repeating this mantra over and over again in my head that I did not want to see dead people anymore. Now, it wasn't like the Sixth Sense or anything like that. It wasn't like they would come up and talk to me or anything like that. That did not happen. I would just see them a lot. And I kind of knew that they were dead people because they were all jacked up. They looked like us. It didn't look like spirits. Okay? It wasn't like they were see-through or anything like that. They just look like people. But they might be like a person that had a massive head wound. Or a person whose chest was full of blood because of a gunshot wound or something like that. And they would just be kind of hanging out. And I would see them and I kind of knew that they weren't real, or at least not something everybody else could see, because nobody else reacted. And you would think that if there was a person standing in the room with a giant wound in his chest, people would be like, oh my God, are you okay? But nobody ever reacted. So I began to think that maybe I'm crazy. You know, maybe there's something wrong with me, because I'm having all of these nightmares every night. And then during the day, I'm seeing all these things, and it's really freaking me out. So I tried doing the Bible underneath the pillow thing. And at the same time, I kept repeating this mantra in my head, I don't want to see this anymore. And for whatever reason, it worked. From that day on, I did not see dead people anymore. I don't know if it was the Bible underneath the pillow that worked, or I don't know if it was my own will saying I don't want to see this anymore. Maybe I closed myself off to it. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I no longer saw that. I did, however, continue to have the nightmares every night. Nothing has ever stopped that. So I tell you that to tell you that I have experience seeing things. I am not easily frightened. I'm not somebody that is going to see a shadow or see, something out of the corner of my eye and freak out and get super scared and build this elaborate storyline about it. That's not who I am. I am very calm in the face of absolutely horrifying things. Because I've lived with these very vivid nightmares every night of my life. So I've seen things that would drive most people crazy. I tell you that so that you will understand and realize that what I'm about to tell you about this house is in no way something that I concocted in my mind because I saw a shadow or I heard the house settling or I heard a mouse running and I thought, oh my God, there's a demon. It's not like that. I'm not that kind of person. So my father got stationed in Japan. That's where we were supposed to go. About a month before we were set to leave, we got the news that my grandmother had gotten lung cancer. And she didn't have very long. So my mom obviously wanted to be here with her mother. So my father put in a request for a humanitarian transfer. He wanted to be stationed somewhere closer to home so that mom could be with her mother during the end of her life. Now, when you do such a thing, you have it like a dream list. Every time that you're going to be reassigned, you have a dream list where you can put down like your top 3 places that you would like to go. And if they have an opening at any one of those places, then they will try to put you there. So our places were either Andrews Air Force Base, which is, they say Maryland, but it's actually it's in D.C. pretty much. And it's about an hour and a half from where I live now. Or the Pentagon, which is about the same distance. Those were the top 2. As it turns out, they had an opening in Dad's field at the Pentagon that he was qualified for, and that's where he went. So that brought me back here to where I live now, my hometown where I was born. Now, the first house that we lived in when we moved back here, we rented off of a lady that my grandfather worked for. My grandfather took care of her farm for her, took care of her cows and all that kind of stuff, and did her lawn and painted and fixed things and all that. So we got a really good deal on this house that we could rent. So we moved into the house. It was way back out in the country. And at first it was awesome. I mean, it had a nice big yard that went with it, a front and a backyard. It had a stretch of woods behind it that was on the property as well. Very, very cool place. It had amazing doors. Like my room upstairs had like a castle door. It was so awesome. So needless to say, we really loved this house when we first moved into it. It was amazing. It didn't take very long before I started to hear things in the house. I would hear the sounds of people running around. Now, my mother worked, my father worked at the Pentagon, so he was not home a lot. And Mom worked during the day. So when I would hear things, sometimes there wouldn't be anybody home. And that always made me think, what the hell's going on? There's nobody here. I shouldn't be hearing people running around. So I'm the kind of person that when I hear something strange, I go in and I investigate it. I'm that person in every horror movie that you scream at the screen Hey, stop. Don't go in there, dummy. You're going to get killed. I'm that guy. I go in there. That's my natural instinct. I want to know what's going on. So every time I would hear this stuff going on, I would go and investigate it, but there was never anything to be found. I never once found a rat or a mouse or any kind of animal that would explain the running around I was hearing. And what I was hearing wasn't sounds of scampering of a rat or something like that. It sounded like people running up and down the stairs. That's how it started. Now I noticed that when mom and dad and my little brother were home, you didn't really hear it. There was nothing that was going on really. It only seemed to happen when I was there by myself. So that went on for a couple weeks. And then I started hearing the sound of children giggling and laughing like they're playing. And that happened as the running up and down the stairs was going on. So it sounded to me like little kids were running up and down the stairs and laughing and giggling. Now, as you can imagine, that was very alarming. I thought, holy crap, what's going on? Are there kids in my house? I'm not a big fan of little kids. You know, they kind of annoy me. So I would go, of course, and try to find out what's going on. Where are these kids at? Never found anything. Never saw anything, never heard anything other than the running up down the stairs and the giggling. This went on for a while. And one night when I was out with my friends, because I was a teenager at the time, so I went out and stayed out real late and then came home in the middle of the night. So one night when I'm coming home, I get out of the car and I begin to walk towards the porch where the door is. From my car where I parked to the door that I needed to get into the house was somewhere around 20-25 yards. And as I began walking that, I started to hear this high-pitched scream. That's really the only way I can describe it. It was this terrifying screaming sound. But it didn't sound like a person screaming. It was much more intense. It didn't sound human at all. It was very, very scary sounding. Now, most people, when they hear something like that, would take off running towards the door. That's your natural instinct to do. But as I said before, I'm not that kind of person. I turned around to see what was making that noise. And I started kind of looking around, trying to figure out what the hell was screaming. Is there a person on my property here that is hurt or something and needs help? Is there somebody being murdered or something? What's going on? Why is this crazy, scary screaming happening? So I'm looking out across this little, what we called the backyard, but it was, in all reality, it was basically a little field. And I'm looking out across this, trying to see if I can see anybody. And it's dark outside. Now, I live up in the mountains. There's not really street lights or anything like that out there. So when it's dark, it's dark. But also, there is natural light coming down from the moon and from the stars, because out in the mountains, you can see the entire sky with the stars. It's quite breathtaking to watch, because you don't have all that light pollution that you have in towns and cities. So I'm looking out across the field and I notice something is glowing. And it's very strange. It's like you know those glow sticks? How they kind of glow neon and it's a different kind of glow than a flashlight? It was like that, but it was white. And I thought, what in the hell is that? That glowing started coming towards me. It was large. That's all I knew when I first saw it, because it was pretty far away. But as it got closer, I noticed that it started to become a shape that I could recognize. It looked like a human shape. But the strange thing was, it wasn't something running across the field at me. It was flying towards me at a height of probably about 7, 8 feet from the ground, somewhere in that range. Just flying at me. Now it gets within, I don't know, 15, 20 yards of me. And at this point, I can kind of make out features. I mean, this looks like a very, very old woman. I can see scraggly hair, long scraggly hair coming out of her head, and her face is incredibly wrinkled. And she is screaming. I mean, screaming like a damn banshee screaming. Now at this point, I thought, I gotta get the hell out of here. Because I don't know what she's going to do when she gets here. But I'm pretty sure that if she can fly across the field and she's glowing like that, it ain't going to matter if I punch her in her mouth. She's going to keep coming. So I turn around and haul ass. I make it to the porch. The porch door, you open up and run into the porch. And the porch is like a screened-in porch. And we had that painter's plastic over top of the screen because it was cold. It was late fall, getting ready to be winter. And so we screened all that in so I could go out there and smoke cigarettes, because I smoked at the time, because I couldn't smoke in the house because Mom's allergic to cigarette smoke. So I would go out on the porch there and smoke my cigarettes, and that way I could be a little warmer. So I managed to make it to that porch right before that old lady caught me. And she just stopped there at the door and looked at me. And I looked at her. And some time went by. It seemed like forever to me. But in reality, probably 30 seconds at that. Then she turned and hauled ass back across the field. And disappeared. So that was the old lady that we would see out in the field that I spoke about in the last episode. Now, one time, a buddy of mine, the guy actually who does the theme song for the show, he is one of my best friends. He went to school with me. We became best friends when I was in high school. And he had come over to stay the weekend with me because my parents had taken my little brother to a tournament. My little brother was a wrestler, and they had a big wrestling tournament across state. And they had went there to take him to that tournament, and they were staying in a hotel room. So I had the house to myself all weekend. Now, most kids, teenagers, when they have the house to themselves, they're going to have a big party. That's usually what happens. But I'm not really a party guy. So I thought, I'll have John over, my buddy, and we'll hang out and we'll blast some music and have fun and play some video games, and it'll be fun. That was my thing I wanted to do for the weekend. So he comes over. So as we get out of the car and we're walking towards the house, here comes that old lady again. So we haul ass. And it became almost a nightly ritual of when I would get home, I would just haul ass to the porch and try to get there before she got me. And she never got me. I always reached the porch before she reached me. So I don't know what would have happened if she would have reached me. I didn't want to find out. So that happens. We run onto the porch. So once we get to the porch, I'm unlocking the door. And John is standing there staring at the plastic over screen. And holes started appearing in the plastic. It looked as if somebody was poking their finger through the plastic and making holes. There was no finger that I could see. At this point, the old lady had disappeared. I don't think she flew away. She just disappeared. I don't know where she went. My back was turned. I was unlocking the door. But when I turned back around, she wasn't there. But I saw the holes being punched in my plastic. And John, of course, is visibly upset at this point. So we go inside. I calm him down. We start playing Super Nintendo. So we're hanging out, playing Nintendo, having a good time. And you'll hear kids running up and down the stairs and giggling and stuff like that going on. And It's kind of freaking John out, but I'm like, hey, man, it happens all the time. Don't worry about it. It's all good. So it gets to be about 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And it's time to go to bed. I'm tired. He's tired. So we go upstairs to my room, and I've got a bed, and I've got a sofa, and I've got a chair, like a normal chair, in my room. So he's going to sleep on the couch. I'm going to sleep in the bed. That's the plan. So we go up to the room, and I lay down in the bed and get ready to go to sleep. And John sits down on the couch there. And all of a sudden, the Super Nintendo turns on. The TV turns on downstairs. And you can hear the video game that we were playing. Somebody is playing the Super Nintendo. And there's a bunch of giggling going on. Now, John is very freaked out now. He's like, what in the hell? And I tried to explain to him, dude, I think there's little kid ghosts or something here. They do stuff like this. It'll be okay. They won't hurt you. About that time, a stereo comes on downstairs at a volume that is beyond tolerable. It is incredibly loud. John starts to really freak out and starts screaming. I get very pissed off because I'm trying to go to bed. And this stereo is so damn loud, there's no chance I'm going to sleep. Now, it might sound at this point that I'm rather cavalier about this crazy stuff that's going on in my house, but you have to realize I'm used to it at this point. This happens all the time. The stereo thing is new. That's never happened before. But I'm used to hearing the video game play. I'm used to hearing the kids run around and giggle. I'm used to this kind of stuff. So, to me, it's not this earth-shattering, scary thing. It's a normal day. So we go downstairs. John comes with me because he does not want to be alone. And he is freaking out and he wants to know who is in the house, who turned on the stereo, what's going on. Somebody's in the house, they're going to hurt us. And I try to explain to him there's nobody in the house. The house is locked up tight. There's no way anybody can get in. But he doesn't believe me. He swears somebody must have snuck in the house and they're in here. So I walk over to the stereo and I start hitting the power button to try to turn the stereo off. It won't turn off. And John is like, turn it off. And I'm like, dude, it won't turn off. And he's like, unplug it, man. So I reach down and grab the plug. I plan on unplugging it so it can't make noise anymore. So I grab the plug and I go to pull it and I realize it's not plugged in at all. It's not plugged into anything. And I hold the plug up and show John, dude, it's not even plugged in. And it's still playing. So at this point, I am beyond pissed off. So I scream at the ghost, whatever it is that's doing it, to cut that stuff out. Only I didn't say stuff. I use another word that begins with S that I cannot say on the radio. All at once, silence. The video game system shuts down, turns off, the TV turns off, the stereo turns off. There is no more noise. We go back upstairs. I lay back down in bed. I'm going to go to sleep because it's finally quiet. John is standing in the middle of my bedroom. He will not lay down. I tell him, dude, go ahead and lay down, bro. It's okay. Everything's cool now. He just continues to stand there. He's scared to death. So I go to sleep. I know that's a bad thing to do because my friend is scared. But at this point, I'm tired, man. It's going on 5 in the morning. I'm really tired. I want to go to sleep. So I went to sleep. I woke up a little bit after noon, going on 1 o'clock. I open my eyes, I sit up in bed, and I look, and there's John, still standing in the exact same place that he was standing when I went to sleep. Now, I don't know if he ever went to bed. I asked him if he had been standing there all night, and he had told me yes, he had been. He had not moved since I went to sleep. He was still very, very scared and wanted to get the hell out of that house. So I took John back to town, and we stayed the next night in at his house because he would not come back to my house. So that's one very, very eventful night that I had at the house. I mentioned on the last episode about the house breathing. I'll tell you that story really quickly. There was a girl that I was kind of into. And she was kind of smoking, you know what I mean? And I convinced her to come back to the house with me to, quote unquote, study. Now, nobody was home because my father did not get home until damn near 7 o'clock at night. My mom did not get home till almost 6 because she was working. My brother had practice after school, so he didn't get home till right around when Mom got home. So from the point when I got home, I had the house to myself for several hours. And I fully intended to take advantage of that fact. So I managed to convince this girl to come back to the house with me, and we're going to study. So we're sitting on the couch in the living room, and we got our books out. You know, we are putting forth the appearance that we are there to study. So then I kind of start to get a little closer, you know, and start to make my move and everything, and things are going fairly well. It's very, very quiet. We don't have any TV on or any music or anything. It's quiet in the house. The only sounds that can be heard are us. And at this point, we had kind of started to kiss a little bit and that kind of thing. Then all of a sudden, extremely loudly, there's this sound. Now, I described it as the house breathing. That's because that's what it sounded like to me. The sound was like a sound, but very low pitched. And it sounded like an inhale and an exhale, because it would grow in volume and then decrease in volume again. It literally sounded like the house was breathing. And it was very, very creepy sounding. Now, I had never heard that sound before. If I had a furnace, I would swear to you that it was about to explode, because that was a very bad sound. But we had a wood stove in the house. That is how the place was heated. So there was nothing that should have been making that sound. Now, the lady that was with me obviously stopped what she was doing. And her words were something along the lines of, "What in the hell was that?" But I don't think she said hell. I think she probably used another word that I also cannot say on the radio. Now, I should have been honest with this girl. I should have explained to her that I believe this house is haunted. I don't know what's going on here, but there's all kinds of very strange and potentially dangerous things that have been taking place here, and it's probably not a good idea for you to be here. That's probably what I should have said. But I'm a teenager, and she's damn hot. And I'm trying to get to know her a little bit better. So that is not what I say. I try to explain to her that it's not a big deal. That old houses like this sometimes settle and make weird noises. Now, I understand that's a very lame explanation for a very scary-ass thing. She thought the same way. She thought that that explanation was not sufficient whatsoever. And she told me so in not so many words. Now, I was trying very hard to convince this lovely lady to chill out, hang out, and let's get back to what we were doing. Because I was really enjoying what we were doing. I almost had her. I almost had her convinced. When it happened again. This time even louder. Before I could even say anything, she got up and started towards the door. And I said, hey, wait a minute, you forgot your bag. Because her book bag was there on the couch. It had all of her stuff in it. She said, you bring it. I'm not coming back over there. And walked out the door. And waited for me at my car. Now, I thought maybe if I took my time gathering up everything, then she might change her mind and come back in. She did not. She did not leave the side of that car. So I gathered up her stuff, and I walked back out to the car, and I decided to make the best out of a bad situation, and if we couldn't have any alone time in the house because whatever the hell was in there wouldn't let us, maybe we could have some alone time in the car. Wouldn't be the first time that that kind of thing has happened. But alas, it was not to be, because she was definitely no longer in the mood for any kind of romance. So I ended up taking her home, and she did not speak to me very much after that. I was a very nice guy. I was charming. I was damn good looking. I was an amazing singer. I was really funny. I was a good guy. There was no reason other than this crazy, scary thing that had just happened that would make her not talk to me. I was a complete gentleman. I didn't try to force her to stay or do anything that was untowards. We remain friends to this day, but any hopes of any kind of romantic relationship were just gone. It was never to be. Now, I'm married now, very happily married, so there is no reason for any kind of romantic relationship to happen anymore anyway. But they ruined it completely. The ghost or whatever the hell was in that house ruined it completely. Now, really quickly, the history of the house. There wasn't a whole lot to be found on the house because it went way back. It was built in the early 1800s. But from what I could find, and this wasn't from actual records, this was from stories that were in the newspapers and stories that people had told about the house. Supposedly that house used to be a schoolhouse way back in the old days. This was back before public schools, where the people in the community would bring their children to the schoolhouse, and that's where the teacher would be, and they would teach the kids. There was no such thing as schools back then. At least not as we know them today. So it used to be an old schoolhouse. So according to the stories, there was a fire one day. Nobody's quite sure how the fire started. There were several different theories that were put in the paper. Nobody quite knows what started this fire, but for whatever reason, the place caught fire. The teacher started trying to get the kids out, but the fire spread very quickly, and within less than a minute or two, the entire place was on fire. there was nowhere to go. The teacher and the children ended up dying of smoke inhalation and then being consumed by the fire. So in all, over 30 kids died in that home, along with the teacher. Now, I wanted to know what the teacher looked like because I heard the kids. Okay? I've heard the kids up and down the stairs giggling and goofing off. But I wanted to know, was the teacher the thing that's in the field? Is that the teacher who is coming at you screaming, trying to grab you? I couldn't find any pictures, but the one description that I found of the teacher said that she was an elderly woman with long gray hair. So my theory is that the activity in the house is mostly the children goofing off, playing pranks. They steal the remote, put it in the freezer, those kind of things. The entity that is in the field, I believe, is probably the teacher. And she is probably chasing you, screaming, because she is trying to grab you to get you out of the fire. Maybe she thinks she's still in the fire, and she's trying to save you. Maybe. That's a good explanation in my mind. As far as the house breathing thing, I don't know what the hell that was. I suspect that whatever that was might have also been what started that fire way back then. Because they never could figure out what happened. Nobody knew why it started. It just seemed to suddenly start and spread like crazy. And within a minute or two, the entire place is on fire. So that's my theory on it. That's the history of the house from the stories that I have read in the paper about it. So that is the story of the home that I used to live in. Now I'm going to throw over to Old Boy now and get some of his experiences and his thoughts on what I've said.
Thank you, brother. The only problem is I told one of my stories last week, guys. If you listen to this show, I'll talk about this first. Sounds like your house was haunted. Your friend was probably scared to the point where you probably should have took him home that night. Probably could have had a heart attack because he probably was so scared of, like, he was in shock. And you were young then, so you probably next time you probably should take your friend home, James. It's probably not a good idea to go to sleep and leave your friend like that because he's not used to that kind of house. But hey, each their own. Now the other thing that just sucks. You got a beautiful woman. You guys were kissing and doing whatever you guys are going to do. This is a family show. We don't need to go any farther than that. But the house stopped you from it. I would say another word, but like I said, this is a family show. But hey, you know, the damn house didn't want her there. You know, that's maybe why it was there. Maybe there was some reason, you know, ghost just didn't like it, didn't get the feeling. That could happen because I'm going to tell you a story talking about this. My old house in Hesperia. I ended up moving in Hesperia, California. To help out my friend, his dad had passed away. His dad had a heart attack, but he did not pass away there. He passed away in the hospital. But he ended up having a heart attack and laying in there screaming for help for hours. And then they got him, and then he ended up passing away during operating. I think it was operating table. I don't want to bring that up, but and he passed away. So his urn was in our house. He lived there, and for the first couple years, things would be all right. But I always felt something was watching me. I don't know this. I think they were the first owners. I think the house was built in the 80s. I think it was the early 80s, mid 80s, and it has been there ever since. So I think they were the second owners, but no one ever died or anything except he died. But he ended up, almost pretty much dying there, but he died in the hospital. So I always felt that somebody was watching me. And it was weird because we'd do the show too sometimes, and I have a weird past. I would always have weird dreams, and people would visit me. So just so you guys know, I'd always feel like something's watching me. I'd have weird dreams, or I'd have people who died come visit me in these dreams. Or I would see things in these dreams. Or I would see things, and that's, I've always had that ability. That's why I have no problem walking in graveyards and haunted houses and stuff like that, and haunted places and demonic beings. There's another story on that one. But it doesn't bother me. But my friend had died. And I had a dream, and I don't think it was a dream. She visited me. I don't know what she was trying to do, but it was weird. You could see when somebody passes away, you could see they're white. Like James was saying, it was just weird. She was not regular looking. She was dead. She was pure white. And she visited me. I don't know what it was about, but she did. I used to see my body when I fall asleep at this place. I would see it hovering, and I could see things attacking me. Sometimes it happens here too, but I would fight it off, and it would be whatever. But I always felt that house would watch me. And then we had a black cat named Schnook, and you could tell he would know something was going on, because my roommate hates staying by himself. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've always had luck with the ladies, so I'd always be out with one or staying a couple of nights, and I'd come home and he would tell me that he would stay in the room because he would hear dishes fall and stuff. And I said, well, maybe it was the cat. We did have a cat at the time, but this would happen after the cat was gone. So he would just ignore it. We had another roommate. We built a garage. We added the room into the garage, and he would stay there. He lived there. And he said he would see things at night, and he didn't like staying there. And neither did our other roommate who lived there. He used to sleep on the couch because he said he could see things sometimes. And that house didn't like you. It tried to get rid of you. One of my ex-friends tried to commit suicide there. It didn't happen, but I think it drove him out of that house. If it didn't like you, it got you out of that house. Then I got a cat, and it kind of calmed down, but she would see things. And my other cat that died would visit sometimes. You could see its tail. Sometimes it comes here now. My fiance saw it the other day, sitting next to my other cat. I don't have another cat, so it was a black cat. That's who it was. It was good old Schnook. Great cat, black, beautiful. If you're a witch, right up your alley. I am. So I love the cat. It was a great cat, cool cat. Hit with the ladies. Always likes to be pet. Love being petted. But I know where James is coming from, because there was some bad things that happened. Some women that I used to come to my house would get freaked out and leave because they felt like something that was there. But I think that they can sense something's wrong with that person. They'll get them out of the house. And that's what happened, James. Maybe this person wasn't great for you. There was some reason that house just didn't like that person, because they started doing it when they were there. Yeah, it probably happened before, but maybe they just didn't like the vibe they were getting. They just didn't like them for some reason. It happens. My cat's the same way. It doesn't like you. You'll know. My cat, pretty much chill cat, loves attention, but if it doesn't like you, I'll just smell at you and walk away and won't ignore you. And my cat is a real pain in the ass, because James vouched for that. This cat, for some reason, right now, it's laying right next to me. It's being cool. But majority of the time, it has to act up when I'm on here to do the show, because I go in the living room with no one around. And she's got to sit here right by me like she does now, or plays around and runs around and goes crazy. It's just the most annoying cat in the world. But right now, she's being very chill and petting her right now, guys, as we speak. She's my little girl, but she's a pain sometimes, and very spoiled. Has her own chair, her own house, little house she lives in. She acts like she runs the house. It's funny. She has a little perch up on top of the wall. But she's a beautiful cat. I know you guys are laughing. This ain't got no, but she's our little goat. She makes James laugh because she just does a lot of annoying stuff sometimes, and it's crazy. But she sees stuff all the time, especially in this house. She'll run around and chase things around, and there's nothing there. And I have ghost equipment. I haven't used any of it for a couple months because, the coronavirus has happened. So I haven't been able to go out because California is very strict right now. Um, Eventually we'll get back to doing this, doing tells. That's why we suspended tells for now. If you want to listen to any of the couple shows we've done, James has done the same thing. Virginia's getting pretty strict too. So soon we'll hopefully get back to doing that, guys. For you guys, so you can hear other stories. I actually like this show because we got to talk about something, that happens in real life. I deal with this stuff. James deals with this still. He still sees stuff. We still think we were meant to be this forever. This is just something we were meant, and I think, born to do. Since I was a kid, I've always been interested in ghosts and aliens. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's going to shock you. I just don't care. I mean, it's awesome if it happened. But I just never been into UFO. James just can't talk about it because he was involved in the military. It just doesn't. I don't care. It's not I hate him or nothing. I just never cared. I don't know what it is. It's not like I just never. It never interests me. I mean, it's great that there's the planets and stuff interest me, but like aliens just don't really interest me. Monsters and stuff like that, and ghosts and all this other stuff, that interests me. Ghost used to scare me because it hit me there because I used to get visited by, and my parents always thought it was crazy, but I wasn't. When you're a kid, you're scared of everything. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, I wasn't scared of a lot of things, but there's some things I seen that, one night my mom was talking to me and she had walked to my room. She's all, "Who's in the room with you?" And she looked and there was a shadow there and she said it disappeared. She goes, "I swear there was somebody standing there and I saw it." So I don't know what the hell it was. It was when I was a teenager. I was listening to music and I was doing something. I was cleaning the room or doing something. I was like 16, 17, I think, maybe a little younger. And she goes, what was that? And I'm like, "There's somebody in the room with you?" She's like, "I swear I saw somebody standing." And I think my mom ignored it. She used to hear things like somebody walking on the roof and the cat would do things. We'd hear all kinds of stuff. And my dad didn't believe it because my dad just doesn't believe in this stuff. I never did either. And until I start seeing stuff, hearing things, crazy things. I've heard stories of people's houses being haunted. I've never been to somebody's house though, other than like what we've been doing lately. But like a friend's house, I never seen anything except my one friend. His name was Matt, and they had a house that they said, I guess the people lived there. This house was like in the 60s or 70s. They used to have a preschool, and I think the kids had passed away there or something had happened. One of them or two of them died. And they said they would hear preschool kids laughing. But the problem is with kids, I don't know if that's real, being kids, because it could be something else. But he never told me this till later on. Because this is what we do. When I was like, he was, I think, 16, 17, I was 18. And I could smoke. In California at that time, you could be 18 and smoke. Well, his parents didn't allow him to smoke. He was 17. So at night, we would stay up all night, go outside, smoke cigarettes. Like about a year later, he finally told me this stuff, why no one goes in this little room that's next to the garage. And he said, why? After that, I didn't really like staying in his house anymore. He moved his room eventually because it was right next to it. I'm like, man, I wish you would have never told me, because I started hearing stuff, man. And the house was kind of weird anyway. It was just older. So, like, it kind of freaked me out when he told me that. But I would see things. Like, he ended up getting married to his first wife. And they were living, like, in a trailer outside of their family's house out in the backyard. That's when I first saw the man with the black hat. That I seen numerous times after that with my ex-wife. One night, me and my ex-wife had gotten a really bad argument, and she took off for a while, and she came back a couple weeks later. And her and my daughter were sleeping on the floor, and I seen this black orb just flying around right in my face. And I seen it. And then I saw something standing there watching me. And it's numerous times, and she just didn't want to say nothing because she didn't want to scare me. But I didn't really care because I seen the same thing. So I just ignored it. But bad things happened at this apartment place what I was staying at. The one guy killed himself it used to be an apartment there, but they turned it into what did they call it? A washer room. They got rid of that apartment because that made it the washroom, and I guess somebody killed themselves. And another person, they were doing black magic, and the old lady had died in the apartment next door, so we would always see stuff. And they never told us about this stuff. So it was crazy. So I believe what James is saying because it's happened to me. It's just interesting. A breathing house. I've never heard of that before. That's because it was just messed up too. The house kind of like stopped him from, having fun with his friend or whatever it was at the time, probably a girl he was talking to. The house was being parents that day. So, I could understand that you were kind of mad. But there you go, brother.
Another interesting point about that house, and one of the reasons why I believe that the entity that would come across the field chasing you might have been the school teacher, is because I explored the woods behind our house a lot. I'm a person that loves the woods. I love to be in the forest. I've been all through the Black Forest in Germany when I lived there. I've been in caves. I've been all kinds of places. So that's kind of my thing that I like to do. So we had a house with woods. I'm like stoked, man. I want to check it out. Back in those woods, basically right in the area where the thing first materialized and started coming after me, there is the remains of a very small old house. My theory is that that little house might have been the school teacher's house. The house that I lived in was the schoolhouse. That's where they did school. But maybe that little house that is all torn apart out in the woods, falling apart, used to be where the school teacher lived. And then she would come over to the schoolhouse to teach and then go back to her house. That's my theory. It was a little one-floor cabin-like looking place. And it still had its doorway and a window, and you could walk in. The roof was kind of caved in. The floor was busted up and falling apart. Very, very old. And when I went into that place, it didn't feel good. I had this feeling inside of, I don't want to say fear necessarily, because it wasn't fear. It was caution. Like, you had to be aware, like something was getting ready to happen. That anticipation. That feeling you get right before a fight, when you know something is about to go down. And you know that any second, you're going to be in the thick of it. It was that feeling when I walked into that place, looking around. Now, I never saw anything while I was in there, but I was in there during the middle of the day. I never went there at night. Simply because the location it was in, I wouldn't go there at night because the place wasn't stable. I would be afraid that the floor would cave in and fall and I'd get hurt or something like that. So it's just not smart to go there in the dark. During the day, I didn't see anything, but that was where that thing first materialized and came at me across the field. That house was located in that area where that thing appeared. So I'm thinking if that was the schoolhouse that I lived in, maybe that was the house the teacher lived in beside the schoolhouse. Maybe that's why she's there instead of in the schoolhouse where she died. Because maybe she went back to her home where she lived. And she's rushing towards the schoolhouse when she sees me because I'm a teenager. I'm not a little kid, but I'm a teenager. And she sees me and she's thinking, oh my God, don't go in there, you're going to die. So she's rushing, screaming, reaching for me, trying to grab me. Once I get to the schoolhouse and walk into the door, she stops. I don't know why she stops. Maybe she don't want to go back in there. I don't know. But that's my theory on it. The last thing I want to say about it really quickly is that I was a different person at that point in my life. That was before I died and before I came back to Christ and became saved and everything. If you want to hear the story of my death, I did it on an episode of Staring into the Abyss called Eyewitness Accounts of Hell. That's on the YouTube channel, and also I did a separate video on the YouTube channel where I put just that story on there. So you can go there and see it if you want to hear it. It's very interesting stuff. But that is why I made some of the choices that I made and wasn't the kind of person that I am now as far as being a good guy. So with that being said, I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy because we are seriously out of time. And so he can do his final shout outs and we'll wrap up.
Thank you, brother. I want to thank everybody on Parax Radio for listening to us every Sunday night, technically Monday morning if you live on the East Coast, and 9 Pacific on the West Coast. If you want to listen to all our other shows, man, check us out on James Hershey's YouTube page. He's the bald dude. Looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. You guys want to see any merchandise or get any merchandise like shirts and covert masks? I just got one and I was sharing it on my Facebook page. Check that out. And he'll tell you where to go get those. And I hope everybody has a wonderful night. Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Monster Hunters, and Demon Lovers, I love you. And blessed be.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. That's where you'll find the episodes that we talked about tonight. That's also where you'll find all the other episodes of Staring into the Abyss and all the episodes of Tales from the Abyss. And there's also a bunch of other videos there for you to enjoy. There's paranormal videos there. I do gameplay stuff there too now. Because I'm a big gamer, I enjoy that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff there. Completely free, always will be, so go check it out. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's TEESPRING.com/stores, and that's on the end, /staring into the abyss. That's where all the merch is. There's shirts, there's posters, there's pillows, there's all kinds of stuff. Old Boy mentioned we have masks there now as well with the Staring logo and a couple other masks. The reason I decided to do the mask is because I was able to partner with a couple charities, and the proceeds from those masks that are sold are going to be going to feed hungry children in America. So it's a really worthy cause. So if you want to support the show and you want some merch, that's a great way to do it because it'll really help some kids out. So with that being said, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for all the support you give us. We greatly appreciate you. And until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.